Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rate as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
You have done your work and put us to the wall. We are not your slaves.
I'm not a small boy. You should have given me the report.
I have not seen the report.
Very good morning to everyone. Thank you for, as usual, staying with us here on Global Morning. I'm sure you had a great weekend. At least you're up this morning, 7 a.m. West African time. And, of course, you're on to Nigeria's biggest, as it were, morning show. But then it's another opportunity presenting itself for us to rendezvous and have conversations around topical issues across our country and even beyond. Last week, apparently, was very eventful. Several developments, many of them pivotal, some of them setting some sort of milestone in different areas. And today, they will form the crux of our discussion on Global Morning. I'm Uyag Mofwegwe. As always, it's a delight to have you join us here on the program. And on behalf of the entire crew here at Global Television in Abuja, Nigeria, we say we appreciate how you invested time with us on our programs. So last week, Tunde Onakoya, for those of us who are very familiar with his antecedents, particularly the things we see on social media, had announced that he would spend at least 58 hours non-stop playing chess right in the heart of Times Square in New York. The idea was not just to play the game for the fun of it, but to again up the ante as it has to do with the plight of underprivileged, or what some people now call underserved children in the slums of particularly Nigeria and in general Africa. Of course, Tunde has done that for many years, bringing the spotlight to children who otherwise would love to get the best of education like most other people, but then are not privileged enough. Their parents, for example, too constrained to afford even the most basic form of education, whether it's elementary or secondary. But Tunde and his team have made efforts over the last couple of years to change that narrative for the better. So we have seen, for example, stories that are very riveting of how that his Chairs in Slum initiative has helped to lend a hand to children across slums, particularly in areas like Lagos, to be able to not just get back on their feet, but change their lives very drastically. Many of those stories are not only very pivotal, but they also send good bombs, especially when you have followed the pattern of several of these stories. But what has happened lately in the last, say, 4 or 5 days has been some sort of broadened awareness as to what not just Tunde Onakoya has been doing with his team across Nigeria in particular, and indeed West Africa, but then how that he has redefined the fact that chairs, can bring a lot of succor to children who otherwise would be on the streets, adding next to no value to their lives and those of those around them. But we're going to talk about that in detail in the course of the program today. But just to let you know that these are stories that are not only inspirational, but they are thought-provoking. So right there at Times Square in New York, Nigerians, home and abroad, gave him all the support that he needed, maybe a little more than he would have expected, including prominent people like Lagos State Governor, giving him a lot of moral support. And now that he has broken that record of playing chess for more than 58 hours straight, he has become the first in the history of Guinness World Records to have achieved this feat. It becomes a turning point, all right, in the history of not just playing chess or competing on a global scale, but drawing global awareness to the plight of children, whether it's in the area of education or in the area of health. I mean, videos and pictures just flooded the internet this morning, starting from yesterday, of this very pivotal milestone that Tunde has been able to reach, not for himself, for children across Nigeria and beyond. This 29-year-old Nigerian has again put Africa on the map for the right reasons. All right, let's give you a chance to decide what you like to have for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whether it's today or any other day. And here's a presentation put together by Fatima Umar.
Hello and welcome to another mouth-watering episode on Taste and Texture. I'm Fatima Umar. Today I'll be taking you on how to make irresistible English breakfast you don't want to miss out on. Give it a try and thank me later. A colorful breakfast is a great way to start your day. This is one such breakfast which is filled with all the goodness which I love. But I'm sure this will keep you full until dinner. This breakfast is considered such a rich traditional one, which is served all day round. Traditional full English breakfast consists of sausages, egg, toast, beans, black pudding, bacon, mushroom, and tomatoes. Sausages. You can use any sausage which you like, but I like to use chicken sausage. Bacon. Black bacon is used. It's usually very crispy. Bacon that includes a little bit of Leon, kind of like super thin pork chop, but smoked. Eggs. Eggs are the main component in English breakfast. Clearly, it is fried eggs. Beans. Baked beans is what I use, and it typically comes in a can. Toast. Bread are toasted in a toaster or fried in a pan with some butter. Mushroom. Green mushroom are occasionally used in a full English breakfast, but I prefer to keep them. Tomatoes. Tomatoes are snared in some oil till charred. It is not overcooked or mushy. Ingredients for making full English breakfast: 4 slices of bread, 2 cups baked beans, 1 tablespoon oil, 1 tablespoon butter, 4 chicken sausages, 2 tomatoes, 10 mushrooms, 4 eggs, salt, black pepper, 2 spring onions chopped. Start by preparing the baked beans. You can use canned baked beans, but I prefer to make my own spiced baked beans. Toast. Slice the bread and toast them with a little butter until crispy. Set aside. Preparing the sides. Take a large frying pan, add oil, place the chicken, sausages, tomatoes, mushrooms. Cook this on medium-low heat until it's well seared and cook completely. Keep tossing them around. Once they are charred to your liking, set them aside in the frying pan. Make room for frying eggs. Cooking fried eggs. Heat the pan, add a couple of eggs, seasoning with salt and pepper. Cook them as per your liking. Plating and serving. Now let's plate the breakfast. Place a couple of chicken sausages, fried egg, grilled mushroom, tomatoes, toast and baked beans. Sprinkle with green onions and serve immediately. And now to the health benefits. Yes, this full English breakfast is a good source of protein, essential for building and repairing tissues, supporting immune system and helping you feel full and satisfied. These eggs and bacon all contribute to its protein content. That's all for now. Bye.
Thank you, Fatima Umar, for that very interesting package put together there. We hope to find something a bit, again, more innovative tomorrow on the program. Let's just put you in a reminder that today is Earth Day. Yes, of course, there's Earth Day. There is Water Day, like World Water Day, which, of course, was in March. And then you also have the World Environment Day. World Environment Day is just less than 2 months away. That's going to be on the 5th of June. But today, 22nd of April, is Earth Day. The idea is to have a specific theme or focus each year, and then the theme itself emphasizes the need for collective action to combat or repair and heal the planet's ecosystems, combat climate change, and preserve biodiversity. So this year, the theme is planets versus plastics. It is believed that a particular percentage of human beings on Earth, all right, have some amount of plastic, all right, in their systems. And this development, as sad as it is, has led to several failing in health, whether it's cancer of different kinds or even things like autism just to name a few. So today is the opportunity to draw awareness to how the environment itself is under very critical threats on account of plastics. How do we manage plastics? How do we recycle? Do we even recycle at all? Look at Africa, for example, the so-called global south. All right, see how we're still having conversations around whether or not to recycle, how should we recycle, who is really having that conversation, at what level are we raising our game in that area? Do we have policy direction, clear-cut policy direction for the matter as to how to recycle, how much is the private sector playing their part in that narrative? Is the government contributing anything to it, and what exactly is it contributing, whether at the federal, state, or local levels? And then you talk about citizens, because there's also the element of civic responsibility in these. To what extent does the everyday Nigerian understand his role in terms of managing plastics? I mean, these are not biodegradable as you know it. For example, if a plastic were to drop on water, for instance, it never sinks, all right? It's non-biodegradable. For those who are in the field of sciences, you know what that means. It means it doesn't just get rotten, as it were, all right? So it stays that way. And we have much of this in our systems as human beings. And we have been told that even fish feed on these plastics that ultimately, for the most part, find their way back into the waters, that is the seas. So that in itself is a challenge. So beyond just having talk shops, what exactly is the world doing? I mean, on the global scale now, all right, to quickly run circles around the challenge posed by plastic. So that conversation is not only timely, but it's very pressing. And the earlier we run with it, the better for us as a country, as a continent, and as a globe. We're taking another quick break. When we return, we'll push the narrative further here on the program this morning. Do stay with us, everyone. We appreciate you staying with us, everyone. Turns out Queen Agaba has joined the show this morning. I mean, it's not difficult to know somebody who has had a very pleasant weekend now, is it? So, Queen, welcome back to Global Morning.
Thank you. Good morning. And how's your weekend?
My weekend was smooth.
You look well rested.
Yes, a little work, but more of rest, actually.
Okay.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, so I don't want to talk about prices of commodities with you on the program today, but quite a number of things are happening. So just before you got on the show this morning, I was just running quickly through the fact that today is Earth Day. Yes, Earth Day, like Earth Day, Mother Earth kind of thing. So Earth Day basically focuses on issues that pose threats, practices that are inimical, all right, to the healthy states, healthy in quotes, of the planet, all right, talking about things like how we dispose plastics, how we recycle them, and all of that. And these are the focus is on environment versus plastic, or planet versus plastics, and so on and so forth. But Queen, you and I know that this is not a conversation we have every now and then. Today, for example, there's a chance that each of us could do as much as 2 bottles of water before business closes. We are more interested in the water we're going to drink, whether the water is healthy or not. We're more interested in the brand, as it were. But we don't seem to give as much thought to what happens to the plastics when we're done. All we know is, okay, ultimately, the person who takes care of the environment or who takes care of the office will come, take them out, trash them, or dispose of them. But the process by which they are disposed of is something we pay next to no attention to. Yeah, so I'm trying to kick that into your minds this morning so you can maybe be conscious of it for the most part of the day.
For the most part of it. So, you know, a lot of people make money off plastics disposal.
Right.
As well.
Very legitimately.
Yes, very legitimately. And it's a full-time job. And I think we need to move from so that we can be able to properly, you know, take care of the earth. Right. We need to move from just saying white-collar jobs and all of that to seeing the potentials and how lucrative, you know, plastic management can be. Right. I'm saying this because I know someone firsthand who recycles these plastics, and I also know someone who is in the business of collating these plastics. It's a full-time business for husband and wife, and she pushes and drives the narrative, not just the narrative, but she tells you of a fact how lucrative it can be. So we need to, I think more attention should be put into people, and then the reward system for those who collate these plastic systems.
The reward system.
Yes, should be, you know, properly looked into, and people should begin to see it as a norm, as a business, you know, because this is a husband and wife I'm talking about who are full-time into plastic recycling.
Right.
So they collate it and all of that. So attention should be given to it. And that way it can help us, especially now we're talking about going green, or we're talking about, you know, climate change, we're talking about pollution and, you know, all of that, so that the earth is not composed of all of these materials that are harmful. Yeah,
I think that's a very beautiful way to put it, because whether you like it or not, I was just saying a while ago also that come June 5th, we're going to have World Environment Day. I mean, just last month too, we also had World Water Day. All right, so you put all of this together, it entirely revolves around the environment, the planet, and all of that. But when you drill down this narrative to home, I mean, you bring it back home to Nigeria, for example, you're wondering, are we having enough conversation about this? Because a while ago, I talked about how that most times what we do is we just create talk shops around these issues. For example, today you're going to see a lot of NGOs, you're going to see government agencies putting up events. Some of them, of course, Global TV will be covering. But the question is, beyond today, by the time we all wake up tomorrow, being Tuesday the 23rd, just less than 24 hours after Earth Day, what exactly are we doing? What was the policy framework? What's the policy direction? Who is providing leadership? Who is doing monitoring and evaluation to say, these were the decisions we reached at the other time, these are the resolutions that we have in front of us? Who is pursuing them? Who is driving them with some level of energy and ambition and all of that? Are we doing enough on that front?
I would say I can't tell how much we're doing. I don't think we're doing enough, because if we're doing enough, one of the ways to know that we're doing enough is that we see it everywhere. The media, we see it on social media, we see conversations. You would know, you know, what is being. So if you're doing enough and it's not being projected for the people who need to see it. I mean, I can't tell you of a program that I know that talks about, you know, all of these things firsthand that has been consistent, aside from the usual Earth Day where we have NGOs, where we have conferences, seminars, talks about, you know, plastic pollution and all of that. So I don't think that we're doing enough, but I think we can do more, channeling our energy into the evaluations and seeing follow-ups as well, seeing that, this is driven home, people get the point, and more effort is put to ensure that there's proper plastic waste disposal, I beg your pardon, and people know about the long-term effects of, this pollution, and they are aware of, Earth Day and all of that. So I think we can do more. We can do more, especially in Nigeria. Now, when we're talking about doing more, we should be coming home to us, every state, every constituency, and all of that. So for Nigeria,
localize the idea.
Exactly, we should localize the idea and ensure that. So that way, we are able to follow up the beats, that makes up the greater, so that we can, have a wholesome experience, especially when it comes to plastic pollution and, the world at large.
Management, right. You see, the thing is, most times what we do is we just want to have several talks about this whole thing. But I also think, like you talked about, we should prioritize the idea, all right, of localizing the efforts that we're making, right? But I think that should start from the school level as well. Maybe primary school, when children do elementary sciences and all of that. Then you scale up to university or tertiary institutions generally, where people say, I'm in life sciences or I'm in natural sciences, all right? So you're telling them about biodegradables and all of that, and non-biodegradables. You're telling them what it means when plastics accumulates, all right, in an environment, particularly around the riverine areas over time, what damage it could cause to not just the sea life as we know it, the aquatic life, but to humans as well, because ultimately these fish and all of that, crabs and stuff, will end up in people's belly and all that. Today, scientists are telling us that reports have clearly shown, researchers have shown over time that we all have some amount of plastics in our bodies. Exactly, and you look at that, the implication is that it threatens our health, and it explains very clearly the reason you see an astronomical increase in all kinds of cancer. You see autism on the rise, and let's just not talk about things like kidney complications or what they call renal complications and so on and so forth. So we want to have all of these conversations, but we also need to understand that commercializing it is important, because you must create incentive. You must make people see the need to. Otherwise, what you're telling people is wake up in the morning first and start picking plastics. Let them understand that there's a value chain to it. There can be a business model for it. We've seen people who have done that with the water industry, for example. Growing up, you have to go to a public tap. Back in the day when I was still a small boy, you have to go to a public tap, or if you didn't have a tap in your house and all of that. But today, it has been commercialized. If it's not sachet, it's bottle, or it's dispenser, water dispenser, and all of that. So you have options in front of you. But people actually had evolved, caused an evolution of these models over time. How do we also do the same when it comes to plastic management? I just talked about the value chain of it, for example. How do you expect the Queen Agaba, who is a celebrity, all right, to start picking plastics on a Monday afternoon?
Like you rightly said, it has to start from the elementary level. We should begin to, tell children and inculcate the values of how to dispose, waste properly.
Right.
Those, like you rightly said, are biodegradables and all of that, so that they know, when these things begin from, the infant level, you're growing up to see that it's in you. You already know the implications.
It's in your DNA.
Yes, it's in your DNA, like you said. And then when you teach them, the values and how, like you rightly said as well, commercialization and all of that, you see people begin to come up with initiatives. There'll be ideas around, because it's been a long time coming, because these people have been taught right from their infant level. So they're springing forth, they're coming up with ideas as to how to go about, these plastics, waste disposals, and all of that. So we would have an influx of ideas as to what to do, the value chains and all that. So I think, like you rightly said, from the elementary level, people should be taught and commercialized as well. Incentives should be given. We should push the narrative in the media. It should be everywhere. We should see the importance of proper waste disposal. Aside from the fact that you can make money off waste, we should drive the narrative of the implications and health hazards that these things can cause. I think proper awareness should also be done, especially at the grassroots, the very local areas, the very rural areas, where they're not so much aware of how much these plastics can get back into their system. So if you go to those areas, you find out that we have heaps and heaps of, improperly disposed waste, those that can, be harmful to the earth and humans in general. So
Yeah, it's interesting, Queen. Incidentally, we have an expert who is going to be joining us to talk about this. I mean, he has worked on projects like this across the world, from Europe to Asia to continental America, and of course, he's back home now, pushing the same narrative, especially with focus on the couple of SDGs, just to ensure that we continue to scale efforts in this direction. We're taking a quick break, everyone, on the program this morning. Queen and I will be back with you right after the Global AM News. Do stay with us.
and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the AM News and Global TV. We're live in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Chidinma Jarasen. President Bola Tinubu will on Monday open the African Counter-Terrorism Summit in Abuja. This was disclosed in a statement signed by his special advisor on media and publicity, Ajuri Ngalale, and shared on his Facebook page on Sunday. Nigeria, with the support of the United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism, is organizing a high-level African Counter-Terrorism Summit under the theme Strengthening Regional Cooperation and Institution Building to address the evolving threat of terrorism. According to the statement, heads of state and high-level government officials across Africa, representatives of international organizations and multilateral institutions, members of the diplomatic corps, and members of the civil society groups are expected to attend the summit. The federal government is set to receive around $2.2 billion single-digit interest loan from the World Bank and another budget support facility from the African Development Bank. Minister of Finance Wale Edun disclosed this during a press briefing at the end of Nigeria's activities at the World Bank International Monetary Fund Spring Meeting in Washington, D.C., the United States, on Saturday. Speaking on the sources of international funding to the Nigerian economy, Edun listed diaspora remittances, foreign portfolio investments, and facilities from the World Bank and other international development partners. He further highlighted the efforts of the fiscal side of the economy in complementing the recent monetary policy reforms by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Oil marketers are gearing up to load refined petroleum products from the Port Harcourt Refining Company as workers at the facility race to get it set for production under directives of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. Dealers confirmed that the PHRC was almost set to start releasing products, projecting a 500 naira liters price of premium water spirit, popularly called petrol, from the Port Harcourt refinery in Rivers State. They also expressed optimism that the Dangote Petroleum Refinery would crash PMS price below 500 naira per liter when it starts releasing products. Dangote Refinery is projected to start supplying petrol in the market in May, as it currently supplies diesel to dealers. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project has urged Nigeria's 36 state governors and the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, to account for the spending of Federal Account Allocation Committee allocations to state and the FCT since 2019. It also asked them to provide an widely published document on the spending of FAAC allocations received by the state and the FCT since 1999. The request followed reports that the committee disbursed 1.2123 trillion to the federal, state, and local governments for March 2024 alone. In an effort to crack down on price irregularities in local markets, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, has carried out price monitoring and surveillance exercise in Masaka Market in Nasarawa State. Director of Surveillance and Investigations, FCCPC, Bolalade Adeyinka, says the Commission had received complaints from consumers that despite the appreciation of the naira against the dollar, prices of goods were still increasing, adding that the aim of carrying out the surveillance to ensure the prices are regulated and consumers are protected from exploitation. Kikelama Okere has the details.
According to FCCPC, the drive to investigate the market is the reason behind the continued food price increase in spite of the reduction of exchange rates. Speaking with newsmen at the market after a tour and engagement with the Masaka market executives, sellers of various products and consumers alike, the Director of Surveillance and Investigation, FCCPC, Boladale Adeyinka, expressed the Commission's concern over rising food price across the market in the country. She says the Commission will work with relevant stakeholders to ensure market potential are unlocked and there is no restriction to sales of goods and services.
And the reason for this increase is attributed to transportation, high cost of pesticides, and also, as they say, security. First intervention by from our side is to develop a concise report of all the multiple taxes, and then advise government on how we can unlock and remove some of these taxes. Also engage the executives to know that there is no restriction. You can always bring your goods to the market. Then we also unlock the anti-competitive tendencies or cartels. If there are cartels, by reason of the fact that you are restricted to enter or restricted to supply, we will unlock it as well.
While interacting with sellers in the market, they noted the price of food goods is based on the price they got it from the farmers and industries.
The local government, they are trying their own best for this massacre market so that we see the price, they are control the price very well. Session, anybody to bring the fresh goods for the market, we know them immediately. No wasting time, we know them. If we see them, we will pursue them to go report them. We don't collect any money for the people they are selling. Just they are registered for the association, because the reason that they are do the register, because if you bring the fake one, we know. So there are problems with the waiting one for the government to help. Number one, a road. Number two, the fuel to come down. So that if the fuel come down, the price for the food will come down.
If you ask me now, who will I ask? Because every day price increment keep going up and we don't know the cost. They say dollar. What is our business with dollar? Dollar will come down, will go up, and prices will still remain the same. So we don't know the impact the government is even creating for us. They just want us to die with hunger. No improvement. They complain of fuel scarcity. It's still the same. So we don't know what to do. People now, since there's no money, how will people patronize? They don't have money. So how will they patronize and buy food stuff? There is no way. So the government should do something. No? We all want to die of hunger, starvation everywhere. And this thing keep improving rate of stealing. The youth go about stealing things that don't belong to them. So they should do something. No?
It's how we buy, we sell. Because if you buy high, you will sell high. If you buy less, you sell less. We cannot buy less and begin to sell high. Because we are facing the things that other people are facing. Things are very high in the market. So you go bring your own core market, you will not sell it less. Because if you sell less, you go to buy other things, you buy high. The cost of the high price is the transportation. The transportation of everything now is too high. So if they can know something to do about the issue of fuel.
However, sellers and consumers attribute the persistent high food price to the cost of transportation and insecurity. Kike Lomo Okeri, Global Television News.
The Northeast Development Commission, NEDC, has presented life-saving equipment and drugs to the University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital, UMTH, and some selected hospitals. The items were presented to the hospitals by the Borno State Coordinator of the NEDC, Engineer Mohammed Umar, in Maiduguri. The equipment include automated nucleic acid extracting instrument, laboratory incubator, biosafety cabinet, autoclave oxygen cylinder, ventilator, and mobile thermometer. Receiving the items, the Chief Medical Director of UMTH, Professor Ahmed Ahijo, represented by his aide, Dahiru Haman, said the intervention was timely, going by the overwhelming number of patients patronizing the hospital. On his part, the State Director of Disease Control and Immunization, Dr. Aliyu Shatima, said the drug support is just one out of multiple interventions they had benefited from the Commission. He assured that the drugs would be utilized appropriately to meet up with the target of the Commission. The Nigeria Police Force has detained a female police officer who was the aide-de-camp to embattled former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello. The ADC was arrested alongside other police officers attached to 48-year-old Bello and is being detained at the State Criminal Investigation Department, Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The arrest and detention followed an order by the Inspector General of Police, Olukayode Igbetokun, directing their immediate withdrawal from the former governor. The arrest was based on the suspicion that they aided and abetted Bello's escape from operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, who had gone to effect his arrest at his Abuja home on Wednesday. A federal high court in Abuja discharged and acquitted former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Mohammed Adoke San of the money laundering charges brought against him by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The presiding judge, Justice Inyang Eko, while delivering a ruling on a no-case submission filed by the former AGF, held that the EFCC failed to establish a prima facie sufficient evidence case against him. In the charge, the anti-graft agency alleged that Adoke sometime in August 2013 in Abuja accepted the cash payment of the dollar equivalent of 300 million naira from Abubakar and thereby committed an offense punishable under Section 16 of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act 2011 as amended. The governor of Delta State, Honorable Sheriff Obere Vori, on Saturday visited the Okwama community of Ewu Kingdom in Ugeli South local government area of the state, where 17 military officers and soldiers on a peace mission to the community were killed. The governor was escorted to the community by operatives of the Military Joint Task Force. Following the killing of the personnel, the Nigerian military had earlier declared 8 persons, including the traditional ruler of the Ewu Kingdom, His Royal Majesty King Clement Ogenerukere Ikolo Urupe I, and the renowned professor and President General of Ewu Communities, wanted for the killing of the soldiers. You're watching the AM News coming to you live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We're on StarTimes channel 276. Kindly follow us on all social media platforms using @Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. When the AM News returns, Naira crumbles at official window, trades at 1,169 Naira per dollar. These and other stories coming right after this break. Do stay with us. If you're just joining us, this is Global Television bringing you live broadcast of the AM News. Thank you for staying with us. And now on the foreign scene, 1 person was killed and 8 wounded in an overnight explosion at an Iraqi military base housing a coalition of pro-Iranian armed groups. The explosion hit the Kalsu military base in Babylon province south of Baghdad, where Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, or Hashd al-Shabi, is stationed. It comes days after Iran launched an unprecedented assault on Israel, which reportedly responded with a drone strike on the Islamic Republic amid tensions fueled by the Gaza war. And now in business, the Naira on Friday experienced a slight fall at the official window, trading at 1,169.99 to the dollar. Data from the official trading platform of the FMDQ exchange, a platform that oversees the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Markets, NAFEM, revealed that the Naira dropped by 1.38% as against the $1,154.08 trading on April 8. The local currency, on the other hand, depreciated by 17.14% to 1,230 Naira per dollar from $1,050 on April 17. The Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission has disclosed that a total sum of 7.3 trillion naira accrued into the Federation account between July and December 2023 indicated an increased revenue inflow. It says the amount shared by the Federation Account Allocation Committee was remitted to the Central Bank of Nigeria under the caption CBN Federation Account Component Statement. In a press statement signed by the RMFAC Chairman Mohammed Bello Shehu in Abuja, the Commission reported that the amount is higher than the 5.2 trillion naira realized during the first half of the year 2023. According to Shehu, out of the total gross revenue inflows into the Federation account, the amount of 1.69 trillion naira was transferred into the exchange gain differential account, thus leaving a balance of 5.47 billion naira for distribution. The statement added that within the period under review, the net sum of 4 trillion naira was shared within the 3 tiers of government. President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of the boards of the National Insurance Commission, NICAM, and that of the Security and Exchange Commission, SEC. This is contained in a statement by Chief Ajuri Ngalale, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity in Abuja. The House of Representatives expressed its commitment to strengthening existing laws on improved exportation of made-in-Nigeria goods to boost the nation's foreign exchange earnings. The Chairman, House Committee on Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring, Boma Godhead, gave the assurance at a public hearing of 2 bills titled Nigerian Content Non-Oil and Gas Sector Development Establishment Bill and the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Bill. The lawmaker noted that the bills are vital to the development and strengthening of Nigerian content in both the oil and gas and non-oil and gas sectors, particularly in the growth of the nation's industries. According to her, the exportation of a made-in-Nigeria's goods will not only boost job creation, but also strengthen the value of the naira. And now over to sports news. 3 Nigerian boxing sensation Adam Olare, Joseph Imole, and Cynthia Ogunsemilore are gearing up to script history for Nigeria at the Paris 2024 Olympics by aiming for the nation's first ever gold medals in boxing. The journey to the pinnacle of Olympic glory began with a remarkable showing at the African Olympic Boxing Qualifiers in Dakar, Senegal in 2023, where they clinched gold medals in their respective weight categories, securing the tickets to the Paris Games. Ogunsemilore set the stage outright with a commanding victory over Algeria's Khalif Hadija, securing Nigeria's first gold medal of the tournament in the women's 60 kg category. Imole followed suit with a dominant display against Ethiopia's Alita Yadisa in the men's 57 kg category, clinching another gold for Nigeria. Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola believes the club made the right decision to sell Cole Palmer to Chelsea. Guardiola made this known ahead of both teams' clash in the FA Cup semi-finals first leg. In an interview, the Spanish tactician stated that the City made the perfect decision of selling him to Chelsea. And that's it on the AM News, and it came to you live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We're on StarTimes channel 276. Kindly follow us on all social media platforms using Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. I am Chidinma Jarasin, thanking you for watching. I'll see you again.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us on the program. We just quickly look at the papers for you, but before that happens, there are big stories that actually started trailing and trending last week. One of them being the drama that ensued in the course of the week that was, the twilight of the week, actually, here at Abuja, the central part of the nation's capital, when operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, that is the EFCC, had made frantic attempts at arresting immediate past governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, over some allegation of 80 billion, some people say in excess of 80 billion, of some allegedly misappropriated funds of Kogi people. That narrative has been here for a while, but Thursday of last week, the whole thing came to a head, and all of those efforts actually collapsed right in front of the FCC operatives, because we understand that he had been whisked away from the house in the middle of the siege laid to the residence. But just a few hours down the line, he has been declared wanted by the EFCC with picture of him all over the place, including on the official website of the EFCC. What's more, there's now some sort of bounty on whoever finds him. Meanwhile, the police aides in particular attached to him have been withdrawn by the Inspector General of Police. We understand some of his security aides are now being questioned, a couple of them detained, obviously because they have to answer questions as to how he managed to escape. Some have argued that, by the way, the police should have withdrawn from him at that point where it was very glaring that the EFCC wanted him. But the question is, do the policemen answer to the EFCC or to the IGP? Maybe because they had not gotten a directive from above, as we know it. So they had to stay put and then obey the last command, as it were. But today, it's no longer news that Yahaya Bello is being wanted, because first, there's the allegation of financial misappropriation hanging on his head. There is also the fact that he doesn't have immunity clause on him anymore. So he's, for want of better words, vulnerable now, all right? What's more, some of his aides, some of those who are believed to have been accessories to this alleged crime, have been taken in for questioning by law enforcement and the anti-graft agency, the EFCC. So these are some of the issues that have been developing. And Queen, you were here yesterday producing and reading the news, for example. There's no way you wouldn't have come across the Yahaya Bello stories across the national dailies and so on and so forth. But beyond Yahaya Bello, this is yet another spotlight on the fight against corruption. People have talked about how that in this country, governors are more like some Greek gods. They are like demigods. So you are a governor, you're some sort of emperor, as it were. And you have analysts who have said, well, don't blame the governors. Blame it on the Constitution, because the law empowers them that much. Some people will say governors in Nigeria can do and undo. Yet the same governors ironically tell you, well, I'm not in charge of security in my state. I'm just the figurehead chief security officer, because I do not have control over the military or armed forces. I do not have control over the police or even the NSADC, for example, and so on and so forth. So let's use it as a basis to talk about the fight against corruption, because it will appear the Bello case now is another instance of a litmus test for the EFCC and the fight against corruption.
Yes, and I must say that everyone should be accountable irrespective of your position, political affiliations and positions. As a matter of fact, you should be more accountable if you have held political positions of leadership, if you've been a governor before, been a minister before, or you're a sitting governor. Where it's most concerning for me is the fact that, it was reported that the sitting governor of Kogi State, Usman Ododo, whisked away Yahaya Bello. And he did that uninterrupted, unhindered.
Because he has immunity clause.
He has immunity clause. So can we begin to talk about immunity clause, where, because you're a sitting governor, you are immune to, interrogations and, stoppings from the... as a sitting governor, that's where we talk about accountability. I don't know what you think about it. I think that, the immunity clause should be to an extent, there should be exceptions where a sitting governor should be questioned or stopped, especially in cases like this. What were you doing, knowing fully well that you were the predecessor of this person that is being wanted by the EFCC or being, that is about to be arrested by the EFCC for questionings and all of that. What were you doing in the premises? Those are exceptions. When we're talking about accountability, and when we say immunity clause and we're talking about immunity, there should be an exception so that, you know, we can put all of this. This is in a bid to fight corruption. This is also on the pathway to the war against corruption that we talk about. Because if Usman Ododo had been intercepted by the police or maybe stopped, and, you know, possibly we wouldn't have to have Yahaya Bello's pictures all over the internet for, you know, wanted by the EFCC. And so now Yahaya Bello, I wonder why. I like the fact that, you know, his securities have been taken away from him and his aides are, you know, under are being interrogated and questioned. So but what I am particular about is why Usman Ododo was found in his premises at such hour, and, you know, he left without, you know, being checked and being stopped. And then why did, at the point where, now I want to know what happens when, you know, instructions and orders are given like this, and you know that this man is with security, he has the police, you know, in his, there should be some sort of communication between the IGP and the EFCC, so that at that point where he was wanted for questioning, these police who are with him should have, you know, been more like a help to get him to be, you know, questioned by the EFCC and not protect him from the EFCC.
It's interesting because today, former chairman of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission, NHRC, Professor Chidin Odinkanlu, himself a lawyer, has an article out in today's issue of the Vanguard newspaper, where he is highlighting, in light of this Yahaya Bello case, issues around the judiciary. In fact, he alleges that even the judiciary is complicit. That's his opinion entirely. And he talks about the trajectory that has led to this Yahaya Bello case, and even some of the instances around the COVID-19 era, and so on and so forth. But again, it spotlights the fact that corruption is not only systemic in Nigeria, but we have failed to also evolve or whip up some sort of systemic approach to it. You're asking yourself, for example, look at the Obiano case. Obiano was arrested just before he could leave Nigeria. We're told he was going to board a flight to the US when the EFCC had interrupted him, at the airports. Why couldn't we use the same for Yahaya Bello? Yahaya Bello had left office some months ago. It was basically shortly between Kogi, Lokoja in particular, and Abuja. So at what point did you not have sufficient evidence enough? At what point did you not get the green lights from wherever that came from, whether from the chair of the EFCC or from the presidency or something? Because, again, that is another question that must be answered as quickly as possible, whether or not the EFCC is independent and autonomous in the real sense of those words. Because whether you like it or not, there are still people who have next to no confidence in the EFCC because they believe the agency is more like a hound dog in the hands of the presidency, particularly the president, whether it's Muhammadu Buhari, Goodluck Jonathan, Obasanjo, or even Tinubu as it were today. We can say we leave those in the realms of speculations. However, the EFCC has a lot of work to do to exonerate itself from all of these allegations, to show very strongly beyond the Bello case that, look, we're here to fight corruption and want to do that with altruism, want to do that with patriotism, want to do that from a place of fairness and transparency. Because whether you like it or not, the question is what happens when Yahaya Bello gets arrested eventually? Because the EFCC will get him arrested, let's be very sure of that. It's a matter of when, not if. However, we have seen a pattern to all of this. So we're going to paint a scenario real quick, Queen. So he gets arrested, and EFCC comes back to us and says he has been arrested. And, of course, he's taken to court. There's already, charges have been filed against him as it stands right now. And then he goes to court a few times, then a date is set for trial. And then he shows up for trial, his lawyers show up as well. The next time he doesn't show up because he's not well. The next time his lawyers show up on his behalf because he needs to get some medical attention. The next time he manages to come and they say he's from the hospital, he just managed to come to the court. And then his passport is seized. His other documents are confiscated. His accounts are garnished into, or if you like, there's the no debit order placed on his accounts. And then his properties, all of them, they are under watch by the EFCC and other law enforcement agencies. And the next thing is he becomes very sick again, far sicker than he had been previously. And then he needs to go abroad now for medical.
Falls down in court.
Yes, exactly. And then he needs to go abroad now for proper medical check. And then he needs his passport to do that. So his lawyers come back to the judge and says, look, our client is seriously sick. It's a matter of life and death now. He needs to go abroad. Whether or not you like it, ultimately there's a pretty good chance that the judge will order that his passport be released to him on certain conditions. Those conditions are met. Bello flies out. The rest is history. Nigerians get tired of following the whole trajectory because at some point, other bigger stories will come up. So people can't just keep up with Yahaya Bello and all of that. So the point is, how do we prove a point, all right, at this point that we're serious about the fight against corruption? Because whether you like it or not, the FCC and the ICPC are the arrowheads, so to speak, as far as the narrative about corruption and its anti-elements are concerned.
And we've seen, you know, over time how, because of how these cases go about, the trajectory, like you rightly said, sometimes he's given a fine that is even less, way lesser than, you know, the amount that he embezzled or he's, you know, alleged to have stolen. So what we need to do, I think our justice system needs a lot of reform. And this is where we know about the judiciary, exactly. We keep hammering on it. How independent are they? We don't know until our judiciary is, you know, free from affiliations, political affiliations, and independent. I really think that we'll continue to go in this rigmarole, you know, of recycling cases like this over and over and over and over again. But this is up to the EFCC now to prove that, you know, they are truly independent and autonomous, and it's also up to the judicial system. I really don't know how much faith we have in our judicial system to see that. We expect that this time it's a different ball game entirely.
Right.
We expect to see that, you know, Yahaya Bello is, you know, convicted, and for the crime that he did.
Based on the evidence against him.
Evidence is against him. And, you know, justice is served rightly and not, you know, long cases and endless court cases and excuses.
You know, Queen, the interesting thing is there are people who have thought, look, it's the member of the ruling party, the All Progressives Congress, the APC.
And he was very instrumental.
Yes, he had also supported the current president in the build-up to the general election. He was one of those governors who had gone to court alongside the likes of his former Kaduna State counterparts, talking about Nasir El-Rufai, you know, to say, look, this Naira the redesign policy, all right, has got to stop because it was going to be more like a political move at the time and things like that. So people thought on the basis of all of this, well, Yahaya Bello was going to get, at worst, some sort of soft landing in such a way that this hula balu, as we now know it, over him will not have even happened. In the first instance, that hasn't been the case now, has it?
No, that hasn't been the case. And you know why I think this is going to be different. We also see that the time of Betta Edu, you know how instrumental she was during the build-up of the general election as well, mobilizing
as a woman leader,
and all of that. This is not the first time we're hearing allegations around Yahaya Bello, especially Yahaya Bello and his nephew. Especially when there was a flood in Kogi State, and then his wife newly acquired, you know, a very luxurious car amidst salaries being owed by workers in the states, you know, all of that. We've had time and time again, Yahaya Bello called out for embezzlement and stolen funds. But we see that the kind of punishment that was meted out to Betta Edu was instantaneous. In terms of, we've never had, you know, this kind of thing has never happened before, aside from the fact that the seat of those who in the, you know, humanitarian, that ministry, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, they've had cases like this before, but it wasn't for Betta Edu. Maybe the past ministers and all of that, they've had cases of fraud and fraudulent dealings, you know,
questionable transactions.
Yes, questionable transactions. But when it came to Betta Edu, we saw that her position was withdrawn from her immediately. She was suspended and
handed over to the cleaners.
Exactly. And then, you know, you see how sporadic, you know, the actions were taken. So I really think, I want to believe that the fact that, you know, you've done so much in the build-up of the general election, how you stood by the president, how you've advocated, campaigned, and done a whole lot, you know, and belonging to that political party would not, and I hope, would not make him evade justice or, you know, give him some sort of leverage. So for him to have been apprehended and is being accustomed to be questioned at such a time as this, it just shows that regardless of your political affiliations, once you don't do the right thing, you most likely would be, you know, questioned.
I totally agree. You see, as we say in the Niger Delta, in Pidgin parlance, everybody go bear their papa name, that sort of thing. Because when I like it or not, this is a man who had been governor for, what, 8 years, you know, back to back, 2 terms. Right, Yahaya Bello had already been governor for 7 years and counting before President Bola Tinubu came into office. All right, so I guess it's a way of the president saying, look, let's lead by example. That's number one. Number two, this is between you and the Kogi people, on the one hand. On the other hand, it is between you and the law. All right, if you're not guilty, by all means, go to court and exonerate yourself. No matter the weight of the evidence, if you're not guilty, you're not guilty. Bring your argument to court as well. After all, the EFCC will ultimately end up in court. Plus, President Bola Tinubu also had his own controversies around him going into the election. I think, I mean, I'm not speaking his mind, but I expect that for a man under such circumstances, under such very nasty scrutiny going into that election, I mean, rigorous process and all of that, the last thing you want to do is add extra baggage to the one you already carry, because Yaya Bello will be some sort of bad marketing or branding for the president, especially for a man who has said, look, we want to bring transparency to bear in our government. And he has told his ministers and other aides time and again that, look, we can't complain because we asked for this job. Number two is excuses will not be tolerated, because at every point in time, we will do some sort of assessment based on the KPIs, the key performance indicators that we have set. And if we find you wanting, if we find that you're below par in terms of your performance and the value you bring to the table, you will, in his words, leave us. He didn't say we'll send you away, he says you will leave us, all right? So he has a lot on his plate already. As a matter of fact, I dare to say his plate is spilling over. How then do you want a man like that to add the Bello saga to his plate? So I think what the president is saying by way of body language is, look, you've got to deal with this. I mean, this is a state issue we're discussing here, and let's see what the court says. Because if you look at the current national chairman of the APC, he's dealing with something similar in his home state of Kano, where he had been governor for 8 years as well. Of course, while we understand the strong political factor in the mix for the, I mean, based on the Kano politics and all of that, it is also a way of saying to governors, whether you are in office as of today or you are a former governor, or you are even going to be a governor at some point in the future, you've got to realize that you owe the people explanation. I think that's where the problem begins, where you become the white lion, all right, or whatever color of lion, and all of that. So there's that feeling that you are above the law, you are untouchable, you are immune against certain factors and things like that. But I think the Bello conversation is going to be here for a while, for whatever it's worth. All right, but let's talk about business for a while. We understand that the government of Ogun State is now going to sell rice to civil servants at discounted rates, apparently in a move to strengthen the palliative initiative of different state governments. Ogun State has done a lot along these lines, but there are people who still say it is not sustainable, because ultimately, for how long will the state continue to sell rice to civil servants at discounted rates? But isn't that more like half bread is better than... Was it better than against it? Chin-chin? No. Or better than something? Okay. It's better than something, right?
I know half bread is better than none. I don't know if that statement has been, the proverb has been redefined.
Okay, some people say it's better than chin-chin. But I think it depends on the quantity.
Yes, it has to do.
And the size of the loaf of bread.
Yeah. And then the quality of the chin-chin as well.
Yeah.
If not, chin-chin can be better than bread. You know those breads you eat and you break stones? Nah, I'd rather do chin-chin. So I think it's a good move by the Ogun State government to sell rice at, a discounted rate to civil servants, because especially now that we know that how the economy is biting hard and all of that. But the question as well as to if it is sustainable is a very valid question. It's one thing to, bring up these initiatives to ensure that people are, it cushions the effect of the hardship. But it's another thing to sustain it so that let there be plans, make provisions to see that while you're giving these incentives or giving these palliatives, there are plans to ensure that there's a stable price for people to get this rice or to make things better. Not that you begin this, you start with this palliative, to reduce the cost of rice in Ogun State, and after a while they go back to even buying it more expensive than it were even before the palliatives. So the question of how sustainable is this going to be is very valid. And we also want to see that I commend them for this, initiative to, cushion this hardship for the people of Ogun State. But I want to see and know that there are plans, in place to ensure that even when these palliatives stop, the prices of food items in Ogun State is on a stable level.
You know what they say, Queen? Necessity is the mother of innovation, right? So when you're hard pressed enough, when you're under pressure, your best, what they call your creative juice, is likely going to flow, that sort of thing. But that said, we had also seen the Lagos State government under the governorship of former governor Akinwumi Ambode, had teamed up with, or if you like, collaborated with Kebbi State government at the time to say, I think that was when you had Bagudu as the governor of the state, now Minister of Budget and National Planning, All right. So it was Lagos State and Kebbi State, all right, putting efforts together to say let's collaborate. And they came up with this idea about rice. Again, it's about rice. Okay. It was called Lake Rice, like Lagos Kebbi. All right. So they called it Lake Rice at the time. And for many people, it was welcome development. Rice wasn't this crazy in terms of the price. Back then it was a way of saying let's bolster availability of the commodity, of course, the staple food in this part of the world and stuff like that. There are people who have said, look, we should sort of remake that model. We should bring it back on, by this time maybe amongst many more states than we've had. But one of the lessons we've learned in all of this, Queen, is the fact that the subnationals, that is the states, have got to do more. Because that's what the removal of fuel subsidy is now teaching us. That, look, we turn to the federal government for everything. Toothpick, handkerchief, toothpaste, everything. We've got to look at the states. Every state gets allocation every month. All 36 states, including the Federal Capital Territory. Of course, down to all the 774 local government councils, at least for those that have local government chairman. All of them anyway, even though we are yet to know how most of these local government councils spend their money. But they all get allocation. So nobody's asking their respective states. My governor got, for example, 4 billion. I'm just talking, hypothetically. My governor got, for example, 4 billion this month. What's Mr. Governor doing with the money? Who is telling us X, Y, Z about what is happening with the money? At least the federal government does their part to a large extent by telling you this is how much we have shared between 3 tiers of government or amongst 3 tiers of government for the month of March, for example. And you know how much came to your states. First of all, how many persons even follow the money to know how much their state got, to know how their governor is spending it? Because the governors hardly talk about that. They manage to talk about the internally generated revenue, the IGR. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about the security vote and so on and so forth, which means that we have been lagging in terms of holding state governments, local councils to account in terms of what they do, because there are some things that the state governments, based on clear constitutional provisions, must do. For example, you have the exclusive list, which is a list reserved for the federal government. So everything in that list must be done by the federal government, whether it is security, whether it is issues around diplomacy, all right, between countries, whether it is issues around even passport issuance, for example. These are the exclusive preserve of the federal government. But you also have the concurrent list, where the federal government and the state governments meet at the middle. They collaborate in terms of efforts to get things done for citizens. And then, of course, you have the residual list. The residual list is where you find a couple of other elements and so on and so forth. But the question now is, every time you talk about roads in some state, you are hearing the governor telling you it is a federal road, all right? But the governor uses the road. The governor collects revenues from shops, from businesses on these roads in most cases, and we've seen that happen time and again. We're not saying the state government should now take up the primary or the sole responsibilities of federal government. We're saying state governments have a lot of grounds to cover by way of being responsible in light of what the Constitution, because their work is clearly cut out for them, all right, what the Constitution says they must do. So how do we press state governments to deliver more of the goods to the people?
We need to continue to hold them accountable. And, I think, like you said, we don't hold them accountable enough. The conversation is always driven around the federal government. The government needs to, the federal government needs to do this, the federal government needs to do this, and then state government, we're leaving out state government. That's why we have a lot of embezzlement coming from state governors, both present state governors and past state governors. Take Yahaya Bello, for example. Maybe he must have given excuses like this as to why there's so much bad road. Workers are being paid, workers are being owed salaries for months, in Kogi State. This is because when we talk about, a lot of people don't even know, what is expected from their constituencies and all of that. So we need to now begin to hold these governors accountable as to what needs to be done in the state, for example, especially as regards where we have cases where they collect taxes from people, from the state, they collect shop rents and all of that. So we should hold them accountable when it comes to issues around the state. Very accountable.
Accountability, it's broad-based, especially when you're talking about Naira and Kobo. You follow business a lot. We understand the Nigerian government has now secured a $2.25 billion loan from the World Bank. Of course, loan security is not new to us in this part of the world. But again, it has raised a question as to whether or not we've been able to account for the loans that we take. People will say there's nothing wrong with borrowing. It is how you borrow matters. For example, the PDP governorship candidate in Edo State, talked about how that just in January was talking about how that, look, borrowing is not the problem. The problem is how do you borrow? What do you borrow for? What do you do with it? Do you just borrow, pay salaries, borrow, plunge the entire thing, or just plow it all together into recurrent expenditure? What do you do when you borrow? Do you borrow and support capital projects, which should be the ideal? I mean, you should be tilted in favor of capital projects, not recurrent projects. But then we live in a country where both at the federal and state levels, we're seeing borrowing so much to even pay salaries. How do you sustain that? Because this is not a business model that works anywhere in the world. So now that we're borrowing this, which is obviously not going to be the last, at least for the next few months, how much of sense or otherwise does it make to you?
Because of our level of indebtedness, I'm beginning to ask what plans or payment plans and structures are in place for us to, pay back these loans. It's not a matter of borrowing to, cushion immediate hardships or solve immediate issues, The long-term plan, how do we pay back this loan? Because when we take, for instance, as a business owner, when I'm applying for a grant or for a loan, when you go to the bank, you must have a clear cut-out plan as to what you want to do with this money and how you are going to be able to pay back this money and the time frame that you're going to be able to pay back this money. And you will be held accountable. But where we, as a nation, Nigeria as a whole, quite frankly, how do we, it's just a whole lot, because we keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and we're in so much debt. And sometimes when we borrow, we don't even see what we use this money for. We hear that we've been giving loans, we hear of the COVID-19 loans and all that, but you can count, when you go to the street and ask people randomly, you can count the number of people that were given that this money actually got to their hands. So it's just a case of borrowing and borrowing. We don't even see it. Let's not even talk about the payment plans. Let's not even talk about the ways by which, we're borrowing for what cause. When you borrow from the bank, to say to do business or to do certain things, you're certain, if you're doing business, you're certain of returns, you're definitely going to make profits. And then you have a payment plan and you have a structure in place to ensure that, you don't exceed or you don't exit the time frame for that payment. But when we talk about Nigeria, when we talk about the economy and how we borrow, we don't have structures, we don't have plans, and it just doesn't make sense for me, because if of a truth that we borrow and we see, definitely if we see we see what this money is done, what is meant for, we see a change, we see positive changes, we see the economy bolster, we see that it's not just to give out and alleviate or cushion the effects of hardship. We see that the money is being put into capital projects, like you rightly said. We see that the money is being put out into proper, not just even building infrastructures, but ensuring to see that there's a return, there are positive returns. To make a whole lot of sense, other than just borrowing and we don't know where the money goes into. So accountability, this is where we talk about accountability as well, accountability and structure. It can never be overemphasized.
It's very interesting. And while we're doing all of that, we understand concerns around insecurity have erupted again in the, some part of the north, particularly in places like Zamfara, where we saw how, for example, just this last weekend, some persons had to run to government house for safety, because that was the last thing they could do in terms of being safe, being protected and so on and so forth. And we've seen how that even some 6 soldiers somewhere have been killed just this weekend. We've seen people who have lost their lives as well, for no just cause, for no fault of theirs, and so on and so forth. And it raises the question of whether or not we are telling winning the battle, because we would think we are winning. We would think our military, our armed forces are doing so much. All right, but it will appear that it's an issue of solving one problem, and you wake up the next morning, 4 more have surfaced. That sort of thing. It appears that's what we are, because whether you like it or not, you begin to hear of how some persons were kidnapped in Dutse, which is just not far flung from the center of the nation's capital. You hear how that they came to somewhere to somewhere around Galadimawa, they came to somewhere around Lugbe, and so on and so forth. This is even an area close to the airport and all of that. And in all, this is part of Abuja as we know it. So it shows to you how close to home there may be, all of these miscreants and criminal elements if we're not doing enough to run circles around them.
Just to add as well, we saw how these group of armed men or known gunmen and bandits and whatever we call them invaded a school in Plateau State University. And how we saw a video of how students, this was just a few days ago, students were on the floor, panicking and all of that. They were just shooting in the air, killing students, for crying out loud. And we see as well that what has happened in Zamfara State, it makes us we begin to question and begin to wonder, because a lot of money is being put into seminars, meetings, conferences to discuss, dialogues, to engage trainings, for our security personnel and all of that. Money is being pumped into this, and yet we're not even seeing results. We don't see results for all of this. Like you rightly said, we hear a case today where someone is kidnapped, and we think that ransom has been paid, or some sort of like they put it, some sort of negotiations were made, or maybe gun battle between the military and the kidnappers, and these people managed to escape, or they were rescued. And tomorrow we are hearing of 3 more cases. It's a case of taking 1 step forward and 3 steps backward as well. So what do we now begin to, it is questionable. It borders on accountability. It borders on the state of the nation, security. Do we now begin to question, are these people part of the security architecture in the country? Are they part of, do they have some political affiliations? Why do we have repeated cases of kidnappings, similar cases of, killings in different states? Because this is widespread, nationwide, across the 30 states of the country. So it calls for a lot of questionings, because right before my face, I was even in a meeting. I was privileged to be in a meeting, cover a meeting where there was dialogue around insecurity in northern parts of Nigeria, where we had, chiefs, first-class chiefs, security. Exactly, security. The governor of Zamfara State was in attendance in that meeting. Was in attendance.
You interviewed him briefly.
I did interview him as well. So this morning I'm seeing in the papers that, he has issued that nobody in the civil service should
grant interviews to the media without express authorization.
I want to know why that is. Is it that the news put out in the media by people are not credible, as regards to insecurity?
Or is there a distortion,
of the narrative? Yes. So let's know. We hope to hear more from him as to why that is in place. But what I'm trying to say is, in all of this, where are we headed?
As a nation, right?
As a nation.
It's very interesting because, again, there are now issues being raised, too, around intelligence gathering, because this is not a fight you're going to win just by arms alone, or arms and ammunition alone. All right, you need intelligence gathering. You need, as they call it, cross-agency or interagency collaboration. All right, you need everybody to put their hands on the plow, as it were, and not look back, because there's infiltration, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, there's infiltration, because we have heard about compromises in the strategies of the military most times, all right? The military plans a strategy, gets busted by these bandits and insurgents somehow, which means there's always a 5th columnist who gets to compromise the as well integrity of the strategies and the intelligence that these military operatives or troops, as we know them, in the theater of war, are pursuing. But again, it also means that we must take a second look at investing. How do we invest in the military? Are we invested enough at all? Because whether you like it or not, in the final analysis, the military can't give what they don't have. So in terms of human resources, in terms of if you like, capability, you've got to be sure that your A game is brought to bear. Otherwise, you realize that we'll keep having the same conversation every day about this issue. And this is why we're taking a quick break, everyone. When we return, our first guest on the show this morning, we just help us find sense in Earth Day 2024, Planet versus Plastics. Stay with us. We appreciate you staying with us, everyone. We're putting our first conversation on the road this morning. I'm joined by Uthman Mohammed. He's founder, Ahmad Uthman Pure Life Foundation. Thank you, Uthman, for making our time. Second time around, really. You and I got talking on World Water Day about the same issues around the environment. But now we're moving quickly to plastics. It doesn't seem to be a very popular conversation overall. But then, why is that? Why aren't we having as much conversation around it as we should?
Well, thank you so much for having me again. Just like I mentioned the last time, a lot of people are in denial about climate change and all that. This year, the theme, as you know, for Earth Day 2024 is Planet versus Plastics.
That's right.
And this is something that is really worrisome. Because if you look at it, the number of plastics out there, just in the nature, you have about 51 million tons of plastics.
That's a lot.
Yes, that goes into nature, where about 13 million tons into the ocean. So it's really, because it's everywhere, and it's now a problem for us. It's a problem for the nature, it's a problem for the marine animals in the ocean, and many more. But I feel we are not doing, because the reason why these things are not being taken serious, because we have this nature of, okay, I will not do this because I'm waiting for the next person to do it.
Or government should do it.
Or the government should do it. So this year, I think it's really interesting that this topic, or the theme, was chosen, because it's now creating awareness about things we should do and steps to take.
Interesting. Planet versus plastics. Again, somehow it brings us to degradables and biodegradables and non-biodegradables and all of that. When you narrow it down to Nigeria, are we very clear? Do we have clear-cut policy direction to drive this narrative? Queen, my colleague, and I were talking a while ago as to how that people still don't understand how it works. When you talk about recycling, for example, best practices around recycling, incentives for recycling. How do you get people to recycle? How do you just tell Nigerians, over 200 million people, to buy, key into this initiative?
Well, we need to create massive awareness.
Are we doing that already?
We're not. We're not doing that. And you need to have policies that, because most countries in the world that do practice this, countries like Germany and mostly in Europe, is because they have those laws that you cannot sell. And you also have to put this, for example, you go into a shop in Nigeria, you can get as many bags as you want when you buy your stuff. But if you go to Europe, you have to buy your bag. You will not just get it for free.
There's a price for it.
There's a price for it. So that also makes people not to get so many bags, because for me, when I was a student in Austria, I don't buy, because if I'm buying the bags, I buy it for €1. So what I do sometimes, even if I buy them, I just hold them in my hand and I walk to my hostel. Because you keep thinking, okay, I have to buy it today, I have to buy it tomorrow. So now what people are even doing is they have these bags that are not, they're made from cotton or something. You could just use it. So recycling, we have to focus on the 3 R's, which is to reduce, recycle, and reuse. So we need to really invest in it. But as a government, we need to also set up those policies. You need to start saying, okay, let's make a law that you now have to sell your bags. And we're missing the point that if we do recycle, there's so much money in recycle. I'm talking about if the government should adapt that.
But we're not saying the money, are we? We're not looking at that.
They're not looking at that. But they also look at our attitude as Nigerians, because a lot of us will go against it, even if you have it, because they'll tell you, okay, we don't have time for this, or all that. So we need to actually raise that awareness. People need to know the dangers, actually, because if you do not know the dangers, you just keep doing your thing. But if you know the dangers, then you'll try to also help the government, because the first thing is the government setting up those policies and all that. But the most important thing is, okay, who are the people you're setting up those policies for? Are they going to help you? Because it needs to go hand in hand.
Right. It's interesting. Your foundation pays priority and attention to this kind of development. But then we've seen many other NGOs over the years who have tried to pursue this narrative. Some of them probably gave up midway because they didn't get that needed support at the time, which of course is very crucial, and so on and so forth. But let me take you to, just to draw your attention to something that is a bit recent. All right, NAFDAC, all right, recently banned some kinds of plastics and sachets, all right. Of course, ultimately, they are all plastics, to say alcohol beverage in certain quantity, sold in plastics, should be taken off the shelves, should be removed from the market. Distillers came for NAFDAC at that time. Of course, NAFDAC is a public agency, and said, look, if you do this, so and so number of persons will be out of work. The country will lose so and so amount of money. The economy will suffer for it. There will be adverse impacts and so on and so forth. And it will appear NAFDAC had to rethink its earlier decision and all of that. So it's more like you're trying to solve one problem, in the case of Nigeria, and then you're creating multiple problems. How do we strike a balance? Why people earn a living, they are still able to, as it were, take care of the planet?
When this issue started in Europe, we had a lot of people
protesting. Right?
Yes, we have people protesting that it will take our jobs and all that. We have to look at the dangers. But in doing that, even though we don't get to give them 100% of their jobs back, but we could also create jobs by doing that. Because the process of recycling, you have stages. You have the collection, you have the sorting, you have the recycling itself, then you have the manufacturing, which needs a lot of people.
These are an entire value chain.
These are entire value chain. Just imagine you have recycling plants across Nigeria. Let's just even say we have it across geopolitical zones. We have one in each zone. You need massive people on the ground to do this, because sorting alone, you need to just imagine sorting all the stuff from the houses in Abuja or something like that. You need to sort out the bottles, you need to sort out the paper bags, you need to sort out the plastics and all that. So by doing that and investing heavily in the recycling, we're also creating jobs. We're going to have revenue and all that. So, but to say that we are going to strike the balance, as you said, 100%, it's not going to be there. But it's the only choice we have. We do not have a choice, because if we continue this way, you have microplastics everywhere, like in our food everywhere. So we need to take serious measures now to create a sustainable future for.
I can imagine. Last 6 minutes, of this conversation so far, you've made continual references to Europe. It will appear as a model Africa, particularly Nigeria, can emulate. But what are the key elements that we should imbibe and maybe domesticate as a country?
Well, for us, we need to, because it has to be self-discipline first, as I've said. Because, most countries that you see them, when they have policies or something, they try to make you work. It's because they have this self-discipline. They have this love for the country. They have this passion to want to do things. Because it's only you have developing countries where you cannot, if I see somebody maybe destroying something, you see somebody would stop him, would arrest him or something. But
or inform the appropriate authorities.
But there are even countries that allow citizens arrest. You see, probably people will try to stop him and wait for the police to be there. But in Nigeria, you do not have that. Most people just, it's not my property, it's not this. So if we have that kind of mindset, we will try to also help the government and help with policies like that. But we also need to, just like I've said, the awareness.
Right.
Because people need to know what we are doing. Because if you keep telling people about recycling and they don't even know, they don't have an idea of what it is or what they're doing, then they'll ignore you.
Let's talk about this awareness thing, because it will appear like some people say, people who are maybe 30 and above now have a thinking that is cast in concrete. How do we have or evolve a bottom-up approach to creating awareness about all of this?
Well, I think we need to start with schools, because they play a vital role, and also have this massive sensitization with, we need to partner with organizations, NGOs, especially the media, to get the message out there, you have to like break them down into this is the consequence. This, okay, let's start with what it is. Then we move to like the consequence. We move to like showing them, including graphics, showing them what these things are causing and how these things affect us as a whole. So I think with that, that will start this process.
Let's talk about the place of the private players. I mean, in every sector, you have the private players, those who probably want to, as it were, pursue the policies that government has put on the ground, those who want to invest in it, those who want to make a living, not just make a living out of it, but want to ensure that a business model is attached to it in such a way that it can become some sort of income spinner. Do we have private sector partnership so much in this plastic recycling business?
Well, in Nigeria, we don't have, we only have a few. I've seen a few of them actually that are trying to like do that. Apart from recycling themselves, they are trying to like, but what they tell you is that even though we are trying to do that, we get discouraged because of some certain things, like no electricity and many more. So the ones even starting in Nigeria are now taking a step back, like gradually, because they have this, a lot of things that hinder and like stop them from doing that. So in Nigeria, I would say you only have a few.
Right now?
Yes, right now. And if they don't find ways to like, for them to continue, then it will, because a lot of them, I was talking to someone, he said a lot of them prefer to even sell the plastics and all that to like the roadside roadside guys. Here in the city, it's surprising that in the rural areas, it's you hardly find plastics. I went to in Katsina. There's a town before Daura. I was told that what they do is they go to the city and they get plastics. What they do is, have you ever seen a plastic house?
I'd like say one in the documentary, right?
Yes, with a bottle.
With a bottle, yes.
So these guys are building like a shed, maybe for like a barn for their yams or something like that. They put clay in it, they close it, and they have like lots of bottles, and they just build like a
structure from it.
Structure like for their barn or something. So it's really,
innovative.
Yes, innovative.
You see, again, that's the challenge. That part of, I mean, that aspect of it that requires you to be creative and be innovative, you know, about the whole thing. But there are also health implications, because now we're just talking about how can monetize it, how can get people, I mean, bring in some incentives, give people a reason to want to recycle, to want to reuse, as we know it, and so on and so forth. Let's also talk about, I mean, I know you are not a medical doctor, but I mean, given the work you're doing and other professionals from other spheres that you interact with from time to time, you must know a thing or two about health implications of non-proper recycling or refusal or failure to recycle.
Yeah. I read a couple of journals. I started the one with, for them, I don't know, it's based on their own theory that the plastic itself, the water we're drinking, when exposed with heat or something, it's even harmful. That's why a lot of people opt to drink water from like a glass bottle or something. But in general, like I've said, you have hundreds of thousands of marine animals killed every year. Apart from those ones killed, you have ones that, even here in Nigeria, you have the cows that roam around, they go and eat the bags, the plastics and all that. So most of them die because of that. So, and it's not just that, you have microplastics everywhere. Because people dump them around. And the problem with this plastics is it takes a very, very long time to like, that's why it's called, I think, biodegradable, yes? Because it takes a very long time before it, what do you call it?
Before it gets degraded.
Before it gets degraded. So it's really, apart from the water, for example, the ocean itself, I think it supports about 50% of our oxygen, yes? So imagine having 13 million tons every year. And
this has happened for several years.
It's happened for several years. With the way we are going with us ignoring the climate change and all that, do you know that we lose about 10 million hectares every year? 10 million hectares. 10 million hectares is about the size of Iceland. So imagine losing about the size of Iceland
Each year.
Each year.
So what does that leave you in 10, 20 years?
And we're looking at what? We're trying to get to net zero in a couple of years. 2023 has driven the point for us to like really take this serious.
Right.
It has never been hot. 2023, we had the hottest weather in the history of the Earth. And for me, I would say in 2024, by the end of 2024, if we get the reports, it's going to be even hotter than 2023. Because if you live in Abuja, you know how hot it is.
Right.
Like very hot. And even though Abuja is hot, it's not as hot as Yola, or hot as Sokoto, or even Maiduguri, where it's about 42, 43, up to 45. So we need to take this serious. So
you just mentioned Maiduguri. A neighbor spoke with my wife and I yesterday, and because he just returned from a trip, and we just asked out of courtesy how was the trip and all of that. So he was talking about the weather across the country, because he basically lives in Abuja, shuttles Lagos and Maiduguri and all of that. And he said, look, he showers, goes to bed unclad, and then without having to towel, in 4 to 5 minutes it's dry.
You have it.
All right. So I asked, isn't this the best time to have ACs up and running the 247? It says it hardly makes a difference in some parts of the country right now. So again, that just lends credence to the fact that the Earth is not where it used to be as of today, as it was some years ago. But let's talk about how that, as it stands right now, we can move beyond talk shops, because this year's theme is planet versus plastics. Last year there was a theme. The year before that there was a theme. So we've always had a theme. Yeah. How do we move past the theme, the regular narrative, and begin to push actions that are marked and appreciable?
We need to be serious. We need to spend money. Because these things, a lot of people tell you, it's too expensive or something like that. You need to spend money. Even awareness alone will cost you money.
National Orientation Agency has to do a lot of work in this regard.
Yes, need to spend a lot of money. They need to engage stakeholders from different fields and all that. But we also need to have this global treaty on plastics where countries can come together and say, okay, fine, this is what we want to achieve. This is our action plan. Just like I've said, the action plan is always important, because when you have, and you also have to set a target, and you also have to have a time frame. Okay, this is what I want to achieve within this particular time frame. So when you achieve the first one, then you take it off your box. That's how you keep on going.
Right.
But we have to have united and one voice. Let it be like a global treaty where we would come together and we would say, okay, these are things we want, and let every country abide by it. For example, you could say, no more plastic bags or something like. And countries would have they'll give them maybe 2-3 years to stop it. So within 2-3 years, you already have some things in place to stop it.
Interesting. Let's talk about universities as we begin to wrap up now. Yes. We have departments of environmental sciences, bachelor's and even postgraduate levels and all of that. Do you see awareness? Do you see some sort of support coming from that end? Because there's also an academic aspect to all of this conversation. There's the intellectual aspect. We have to talk about research. For example, you just talked about how there are 13 million tons of plastics going to the sea. As we know, it's aquatic life, all right, per annum. To what extent is the academia supporting this goal of cutting down plastics on Earth?
Well, you have them doing, I know a few universities that are doing...
In Nigeria?
Yes, doing research. Nile University, for example, here they have a department, just like you said, environmental sciences. They are doing a lot, and they are focused especially on renewable energy. And they're also trying to engage people, like private individuals and all that. You have the American University of Nigeria in Yola as well doing that, and other federal universities as well. But just like I've said, when it comes to spending money, that's where you have people now trying to step up, because if they want to do it, most of them would have to now start using money from their university, which probably they would...
Will further deplete their finances.
Their finances, because they will now think, okay, we have matriculations, we have other things that, okay, we could just spend our money on. We have maybe to build a new department, or if it's we need to buy machines for like science students or something like that.
Labs.
Yes, labs. Because I had this conversation with someone from the university, and that's what he mentioned, because they would rather think, okay, we'll do this, or maybe build a new hall, or
maybe 500 lecture theater.
Yes, because if they do that, sometimes they don't even get support. They don't get support.
It has to be internally sourced.
Yes, internally sourced, and like they don't get support from government, they don't get support from private organizations and all that. He also mentioned to me that they sent out letters reaching out to some organization, and they never got a reply from them. So you could see how discouraging that
can
is.
be.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but again, you see, it may not be the same everywhere in the world, but in Nigeria, the conversation will eventually land in front of the government.
Yes.
We also have Ministry of Environment, and this ministry has several agencies, parastatals under it, all right? Are we asking for too much if we say, or if we at least ask whether or not this ministry is doing enough? I mean, what more can the ministry do beyond what we have seen it do, whatever that is, in the last couple of years?
The Ministry of Environment in Nigeria, I think, if not probably a few years back, dating to now, you probably you wouldn't even hear of them. They hardly, what do they do?
Is it like they are working in stealth mode, maybe under wraps or something?
They even have, like, for me, that's my personal opinion, they have misplaced priority, because you see the Ministry of Environment doing things that's not even related to them, and they believe, okay, our job is just probably planting trees and all that, but
it stretches beyond that.
It stretches beyond that. You need policies, you need to advise government on all these things, and especially climate change. In countries, I know countries that have even, they don't have, apart from the Ministry of Environment and maybe science or something like that, they now have a Ministry of Climate Action on its own. Just to show you how important this is.
It's focused on climate action.
Focused on climate action. They have funding, they have everything, just focused on that. And that ministry is tasked with creating awareness and also all these policies and all that. So in Nigeria, I would say they're not actually doing enough. They need to do more, and they need to even have this. They have to set up like a committee to come around to get to know more about this. I'm telling you, a lot of them do not even know much about this, the problems you're talking about.
So most of the things they do are probably driven by assumptions.
By assumptions. If you see them attending COP, they go to the COP every year, and we have the largest delegation going to COP. At the COP, we go to side events at ONGA. We have the largest organization. You have hundreds of people. You see 4, 5 departments having maybe tens and 20, 30 people going there.
In each of them?
In each of them, which one person, a director, could just come back and
replicate the knowledge.
And do that. We have 40, 50, 60 people going for the same event, and they come back, nothing. They don't even talk about policies, neither do they. They don't even talk about policy, talk more of implementation or something like that. So they need to actually do more. It's not just about going there and listen, because these people, when you go there, they talk about this thing. During the COP, years back, before the Paris Agreement, before the Green Deal, they were talking about it. At that time, it was just an idea.
Right.
But look at it, where are they now? They have signed the Paris Agreement. The Green Deal is on.
They're driving on.
They're driving on. But for us, you go there, you listen to them, you get your
collect extra code, and then that's it.
And you come back to Nigeria, and that's it.
I think that apparently explains the reason President Tinubu is very keen on ensuring that the federal government cuts down on all of these unnecessary costs that comes to the country on account of people just wanting to travel abroad for the fun of it without bringing any value back to the country. But let's talk about your Uthman Pure Life Foundation. How much of work are you doing in this regard? I mean, this plastics and its management.
Well, we are organizing cleanups. For now, I think that's what we are doing, apart from educating and creating awareness, reaching out to schools, because, you know, the schools and the universities, those are like the secondary schools and universities, those are our like targets for like creating awareness and our climate action campaign. So apart from that, we are just organizing cleanups, where now we'll take the plastics from like, you have like, if you're walking around Abuja, for example, now you just have a place where people just feel like, okay, let's just dump things, especially around Jahi and the rest. So what we do is we create this group, maybe a group of 10, 20, we go clean it up and we dispose of it properly, because you have people that that are into those recycling, so we do that. But also the sorting, some of it, if we sort it out, you only have the glass bottles and plastics. Some of them, they don't have anywhere to even recycle them, because we haven't gotten to that stage.
That's stage yet.
That stage yet. So I feel this is just like a starting point for us, and we hope to do more.
How much of collaboration are we seeing? I mean, from what you know, given that you're a very key player, right, amongst NGOs, I mean, non-profits in this regard? Of course, we've talked about the business model, we've talked about issues around policy direction, policy framework, and so on and so forth. But let's talk about things around collaboration amongst NGOs. I mean, let's take government away from the mix for a second.
Yeah. Well, NGOs in Nigeria, you hardly find an NGO that is most of them talk about climate action, yes, but they don't do much regarding the recycling and all that. When you come to them regarding climate action, they give you, okay, let's talk about, and most of them, what I've noticed with NGOs in Nigeria is that most of them are focused on renewable energy.
Is it because that's where lots of grants come in?
That's where lots of grants come in, and they're focused on, because you go to, I had a meeting with an NGO in Nigeria, I talked to them about planting, she said, yeah, we are not into that yet, because they have money and all that, but it's more of renewable energy, and they are now focused on it. As I was talking to him, he was even telling me that they have solar panels coming in like the following week and all that. So most NGOs in Nigeria, I would say, they're more focused on the climate action NGOs. Actually, they're more focused on renewable energy.
Is that a misplacement of priorities? Because one would have thought there's a way you can infuse the conversation around plastics into it. Does that not just show how that we probably are not interested, or for the most part we're paying lip service?
Well, some of them will give you an excuse of saying, okay, they can't cover everything.
Because they're also constrained.
Because they're also constrained. So they would say, okay, we'll just have, just like my NGO, we are focused on only 4 SDGs. But somebody was like, why can't you just cover the whole 17? And I'm like, I'm even finding it difficult with the 4.
Because of the burden.
Because of the burden and all that. So I get a lot of that. And they're saying, okay, maybe we're going to focus on a certain this thing. And most of them just opt for the renewable energy. Because you have a lot of money going into it, like globally, into like renewable energy. And like there's a lot of conversation around renewable energy. It's like the hottest topic now, especially in Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that's all-time well. I'll talk about Uthman Mohammed, founder, Ahmad Mohammed Pure Life Foundation. Thank you for coming to talk to us today on Earth Day 2024. Again, let's just remind you quickly, everyone, that it is planet versus plastics, how we live our lives, the kind of approach we have in terms of how we recycle or not recycle plastics will matter today and always. Remember that we have no other home. This planet is ours to keep. We're taking a quick break. When we return, the rest of the show continues. Stay with us. As we bring the show to a close, just to let you know, we appreciate your time with us today. Queen and I talked earlier about the Yahya Bello case and all of that. But again, that's the much about corruption. But more importantly, we also talked about the environment, the Earth Day 2024, planet versus plastics. And our guest added some sort of cream to the cake. I mean, icing, they call it, yes, to the cake for us when he talked about how that we must make efforts to ensure that we clean up the environment, take individual and collective responsibility for the kind of Earth or planet that we want to have going forward. That's what we're living it. Everyone, thank you so very much for watching. Queen and I say, on behalf of the entire production team here at Global Television in Abuja, we appreciate you. Remember that top of the hour, 10 o'clock West African time, Anthony Momodu and his team will be here with Talk Sport.